But without further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce Evan here. And so Evan, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about yourself, kind of what you're doing now, and then we'll kind of go back in time to when you were at State Farm and going through that process. So please tell us about what you're currently doing and what's going on your way.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, and thanks so much for the kind words and the introduction there. My name is Evan. If I've gotten to meet some of you, that's great. If not, I look forward to, if you ever need any help, of course, drop it in the comments or reach out to us. My name is Evan. I'm a Firefly agent. I've been it's now my third year as a Firefly agent now. I actually wrote my first policy in December of 2019. So now I just run a small operation here in Dawsonville, Georgia. Currently, it's just myself, and we work a lot with mortgage officers, realtors, and a lot of referral partners, and we've been able to just build an agency that's really just been something that's been cool to spread throughout our community. So been an agent, like I said, for 4 years now. Started off with State Farm, but now been a Firefly agent, like I said, now approaching my third year. Loving what I'm doing, and it's been great to just figure out what it means to be a broker, and kind of how you can make your own value and business strategy. And it's really cool to sit here today and talk with Ben about, how I've been an agent for 3 years now. Because when I was starting this, I really never saw it come into fruition. I didn't really know exactly, what I was going to be getting into. But today here I stand as a Firefly agent for 3 years, and on to my third year now, and it's been an awesome ride. So yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. So with that said, let's go back a little ways, Evan, back to before December of 2019, when this whole thing was, you're talking about not sure if it was going to come to fruition or not, back when you were at State Farm. So go ahead and tell us about what you were doing at State Farm. Do you remember like your closing ratios? How was business going at State Farm back when you were a producer there?
Yeah, so I started out and pretty much the whole time was an agent aspirant. It was an opportunity that was presented to me right outside of college. It sounded like it was something that was, super beneficial as far as a career goes. They talk a lot, it can be a lucrative career, it can be a flexible career, but it's very hard work in the beginning. And so I started out as an agent aspirant. Many of you probably know of an agent aspirant, or maybe you are one. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're basically a sub agent within the agency, working to basically be what I am now and what all of you, may aspire to be. So that's what I started out doing. And so, with State Farm, one thing that I started to learn is really just the referral game. And so when I started out with State Farm, that's what drew me to, I guess, the style of business that I run today, and it's relationship and personal based, so that's why I love insurance. And so when I was introduced to the industry, I had no idea that I would find out that that'd be something that I'd be possibly doing forever one day. But what I started to learn is how to basically build relationships and interactions and things like that, how to get leads, how to farm them. Of course, we cold called, and I figured out what stuff I was good at and bad at. But when it came to like my primary experience there, was learning how to build relationships. And so starting out, obviously a warm lead is a lot better than a cold one, meaning somebody who's introduced to you, maybe they've heard of you before. Being State Farm, you can just call and say, hey, we've probably quoted you in the past, and you're most likely not lying, because probably they have been quoted by State Farm. So just the name in and of itself, so I started to learn how value by branding and just experience can really help you drive relationships and referrals. That's something I started to learn to do very well there. One thing I was finding is I was having a hard time closing the amount of clients that really I would see valuable, when pitching a new referral partner. So the issue I was running into is I'd have all these referrals coming in from, say, a real estate agent. And if you've worked with realtors or even lenders before, or even anybody, insurance is a game of everyone. And so everyone's going to have a different financial profile. Every house looks different. Every single detail is different, pretty much case per case. One thing I'd run into is maybe 30 or 40% of the time I was coming up with a competitive quote. And so that was where I started to kind of see, and I'm sure we'll hinge point into this further on, but like kind of my early on building things up with State Farm was doing that, and it would be typically the times I was losing to somebody who was just beating me by price. And there are those customers, unfortunately, that even though they see the value in you, you may be not saving them enough money. $900 may be a huge deal, $500, $200, whatever it is. So that was the main issue I was bumping up into. So I would say closing ratio wise, I was probably only closing 30 to 40% of my deals. And that's with mostly referral based business. We work some internet leads and that kind of stuff, but my main goal and my main job was the guy to go out and get referrals and that kind of stuff. So that's how my first, I guess year and a half of insurance started, was just learning how to get referrals, learning how to quote, and then learning, how much I was getting beat, honestly, on a lot of my rates because of the volume of, of different people. And so that's what my first year and a half was at State Farm, was shaping what kind of agent I was going to be, is really the roundabout, thing of what I'm saying. Because I know a buddy of mine, he's been working for State Farm for 2 years, and all that office does is they just filter a ton of internet leads. And that's what he does. And he loves it. He does it. That's what he does. He learns how to, use numbers game and volume to drive results, marketing, hitting people twice, all that kind of stuff. That's not my game. I found out I'm a relationship agent. And that is kind of, what I started to figure out, I guess, in the early beginnings of my career.
Can I ask, how did you develop those relationships with mortgage brokers in the first place? Because a lot of times they're getting tons of calls from insurance agents. Mm-hmm. So how did you actually create those relationships?
Yeah, just showing up their door and hanging out with them and not talking about insurance, honestly. It really is one of those things where it's a numbers game, dialing out cold leads. It's also a numbers game in real life, But if you're just a genuine person and you want to help people, you're confident in your value that you bring, really it just turns into how present can you be in someone else's life, And so for me, a lot of this was just over time being there with loan officers. One of the first loan officers that I ever, kind of won, I guess, his name was Jim. Never forget the guy. I still talk to him today. Really, it was a hard guy to crack just because he was very set out in his process. And honestly, a lot of guys were just like, why do you even go after this guy? Because he doesn't really get that involved in the process anyway. I just was like, I want to figure this out and learn how to no, I'm going to win this guy. I'm going to make him send me deals because I'm Evan and I write awesome insurance policies and it's going to be great. And just learning how to do that and get in front of people and, just being being present in their life again is kind of really all that. It was kind of natural. Just when you think about the interactions of humans, we all want to feel like we're important. We want other people to make us feel like we're important. And, we're all humble and we're not selfish about that, but deep inside, that's what people want. People know that you're there to build a relationship with them and not just sell them something. That's where it all started. So just building a relationship with him, started to learn, okay, then he's introducing me to the other guys. And then I can figure out, hey, if I call this guy up, all I got to do is get a coffee appointment. And then the rest is history if I can just build a relationship with him. So that's when it started to kind of click for me. Is I guess that answers your question in a roundabout way.
It totally does. Thank you so much. All right, so let's go ahead and move on then. Right? You've been with State Farm. You've created these relationships. You're doing pretty well, right? Because the reality is when you're closing 30 or 40%, I'm sure lots of agents out there are like, geez, I wish I could close 30 to 40%. A lot of the captive guys and gals that I talk to they're typically between 10 and 20%. So you were doing pretty darn well. So at what point, Evan, did it seem like, did it click for you where you thought, I got to make a change?
Yeah. So it was really it was a bunch of different things. The main driving factor was I'd made a decision when I started to going back to when I, first learned, I can make relationships in this business. I can make it about what I like to do, which is care about people, love on people. Once I started to figure that out, I made the decision that I want to be able to help everybody, and I'm not going to be judgmental about deals. I'm not going to say I'm only going to take these risks. I'm going to put the risk where they need to be and, ride them how I need to, but I wanted to help everybody. And so one issue I was running into, and the tipping point was I was working with all these loan officers and realtors. I'd landed a really big fish, and this guy owned his own mortgage company and had all the, 9 processors, the whole big deal. And I'm just, trying to get something started to this guy where it almost was so much business that I could basically have an office inside his office. And I was trying to get at this guy, and I was getting this volume of deals, and it faded out pretty quick because I was having all of these people come at me and I was only able to write, 20 to 30% of them, 40% on a good month. But what I was running into is because of the different factors people bring into an insurance situation, my company wasn't able to always give that person a competitive or fair price just based on their appetite. And appetite was something I didn't even know existed because I just knew State Farm was the only appetite. And that's what I was doing. They write a great policy, but the rate a lot of times wasn't there. And so that started to be the tipping point because of how I wanted to do business, it started to rub up against those sorts of issues, not being able, everybody wasn't the best fit for State Farm. And based on what I wanted to do, that was kind of the tipping point for me where I started to kind of look other areas.
Okay, that totally makes sense. So at that point, in order to take care of a more broad client base, right? So you could help more of those prospects that were coming to you. The solution was then to go independent, right? To have more carriers so you could take care of them. So as you started doing that research and started the process of figuring out how do I actually help out these clients and get these carriers, what sort of challenges did you meet right out of the gate? What were you facing?
Yeah, so right out of the gate is just accessibility. First of all, is accessibility, meaning like, how do I open an independent agency? What's an appointment? How do I just log in and write a policy, or what? That whole process was kind of the first gatekeeper for me. Also, financial expenses, stepping out and taking 3 months of no income, planning for that. Those were kind of my first two main things. And, out of the gate, I wasn't really worried about the second option. I'm like, you know what, if this is meant to be and it's supposed to work, we're going to do what we need to do, and we're just going to go at it and fight. That part was taken care of. The hard part is, how am I going to do it? And so the biggest barriers that I found myself is honestly the nerves around, once I started to look into what does it take to get with these carriers, then it's, okay, you're invested with a certain company and you're like tied to them. And so is your income and your business. And if you don't do or manage the relationship right, that can be a really scary thing, and that was kind of the first thing that I was like, all right, well, yeah, independent sounds great, but this doesn't really sound even, fun either, because I don't want to have to be worrying about all these things. I don't want my business to fail if I'm not satisfying a carrier. Then I started to balance all that in my head. So those were kind of the first things, is like, how do I do this? And like, yeah, there's aggregators, there's networks. I know there's some people that take, different percentages of profits, whatever. Main thing was just I was being bogged down by how I was going to actually get it done, I guess I would say.
So as you were trying to figure out that next step, which outlets were you looking at in addition to Firefly? I mean, do you remember which companies you were checking out?
Yeah, honestly, I forget the name of one of them. It was a very similar thing. Obviously, Goosehead, I looked into that. Goosehead kind of runs the same independent model. Like, I don't know the ins and outs of it, so saying the same, I'm saying that very loosely. I looked at both of those. Honestly, I called up Progressive, called up Nationwide, called up all of the carriers that I knew of were independent, and tried to figure out, what their different criteria were. And so once I started looking into that, then it's, okay, well, how long have you been independent? And then it's, I'm new, hang up the phone. Or, hey, I need $500,000 worth of sales from you, in an annual year. Can you do that? I'm like, not with one carrier, so all of those things are kind of what I started. So like, looking at it first, where if you Google independent agent now or whatever, top 3, I probably called them. So, I started to kind of look out there and see what there was. And those were kind of the initial agencies that I found. And I just came across Firefly, honestly, by scrolling on Google, and it looked appealing to me. It came up with like a Google review and all this kind of stuff. And I looked into it, and I ended up calling one of the Firefly, like 2 or 3 Firefly agents. I tried calling them. One of them, Justin Stetnish, I'll never forget. I called him up, and I'm like, hey, man, is this Firefly thing legit? Like, that's how I found Firefly. Just calling, and figuring out, what I was just doing my research, and whatever I felt like might have been the best thing for me at the time is really what I started doing. So reaching out to those initial companies were how I started to kind of learn about this, and just what a lot of you probably did, how you might have gotten here, starting to do that research and calling out to those outlets is really what I started to do.
Absolutely. That's great. So I'm going to take another step back real fast, just so everybody knows Firefly is not the best fit for everybody. Okay. So before this sounds too like a huge self-promotion, because the next question is, why did you choose Firefly? The reason this is an important question is because I recognize that for different aggregators, they have different strengths, right? Smart Choice is great. They have really low fees. And that's why a lot of agents roll with Smart Choice. SIAA has a really good bonus program, right? So with this next question, Evan, I want to pose to you, among the different calls that you made with Firefly and others, why did you ultimately roll with Firefly? Like, what was important to you?
Yeah. So honestly, being able to have my own branding. A lot of the issue I was coming up with, and honestly, the issue I had with State Farm is I wanted to brand myself, or brand my company, because it's about my company, it's about my people. I wanted my company to point towards the customer, and I wanted to be able to brand it in that way. So if you go to my website, it's all about relationships, all about you, it's all about the company. We'll manage our relationship with carriers. I want to care about you. That's kind of like our model. And I wanted to be able to, number one, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to get out on my own, I want to get the most I can out of it as far as a business perspective. And so honestly, the biggest thing that drew me to Firefly was the ability to position myself and market myself how I wanted to. All of these other aggregator, a lot of them that I found was, you're still going to run our same name. It's just going to have your name next to it, which is not about me. That's not what I'm worried about. But as far as how I wanted I'm a business developer. I'm an entrepreneur. That's how my mindset works. And if I can build my insurance agency around what I love, which is people, then I wanted to do that. And so Firefly allowed me to brand, you can choose to either brand with them or you can brand yourself, and they give you the flexible option to do that. And that was honestly the biggest thing for me, is the ability for self-branding, because obviously there's competitive people out there that's going to pay you similar, all that kind of stuff. We all know that. But when it came to what's the heart of the company behind it, Firefly obviously was not boastful about, well, you have to be our name and you have to this, but it's no, you carry yourself. We're going to make sure internally things are running the way they're supposed to, but you run with your brand. And that's what drew me to it, honestly.
Okay. So next question I have for you, Evan, is, as you were making this jump, right, which is like a life-changing jump, going from State Farm, who you're familiar with, going to Firefly, who I think we talked for a few months, before you decided to make the jump. What concerns did you have about working with a cluster, right, or working with an aggregator or a company like Firefly as you went independent? If you can remember that far back, right, what was concerning or making you feel uneasy as you were making that jump?
Yeah, first concern is, can it be sustainable? Meaning, is a contract set up to where this can be something that can provide income for my family for the rest of my life? Is this something, if I'm going to put all my eggs in this basket, is this a basket that can hold it, essentially? That was the first concern, is really just, is this going to be sustainable? Yeah, I may knock it out of the park for 3 years, but what after that? Are they going to be around? Is this something that, all of the questions started to pop up. Stability, as far as the company goes. I know the stability of the agency is up to me, but when it comes to the company, is this someone that's going to want to, see me grow, or is it someone that wants to fizzle me out after a long time and then take my commissions? Those are all the questions that you ask. And so my initial concern was, how's the ownership set up? And then also control. So back to, again, wanting to have my own brand, being able to essentially structure things the way I need to, market the way I need to, just kind of have everybody's, the only hands-on I really wanted through the business were my own. And that was kind of my main concern. And, those things were, quickly answered. Obviously, it's just a matter of vetting that out and really trusting in it. So those are my first concerns. And I think we talked probably for 5 hours, total, over that 3-month period, about all of those things. And so, that was kind of my main thing, is am I going to be able to have an agency for, as long as I want to, essentially? And is Firefly an option that will allow for that to happen, is essentially was my main concern.
Yeah. Okay. So absolutely. So sustainability, making sure that it's both a short and a long-term fit. So as you started with this independent journey, I imagine one of the scariest things, of course, is, will you actually get appointments, right? The very first thing, the expectation, the appointments, the training. So how was the onboarding, right? How was it? And I guess if you remember, could you explain what onboarding was like for you?
Yeah. So I'll never forget to this day, this very desk right here, putting it up in my room with my brother. My brother was still in college at the time, so he had nothing going on. And I remember sitting up in this office. So this is my home office. I had a separate office in town as well, but sitting up in this office, my wife's at work. I'm at home, obviously, because I'm unemployed, and I'm waiting on my business licenses to come in. And I don't know, I just remember feeling like the world was on top of me, but also not really, because everything was kind of taken care of for me. So only really real things I had to do were submit stuff to the state, get your business license set up, all that kind of stuff. But then as far as carrier appointments go, it was all automatic. And so the onboarding process for me was just filling out the one form that they send you in the beginning. And then was it Miranda? Is she still doing that?
She is. Yep. She's still here.
Licensing person who basically specializes in negotiating those relationships. So every day I would get a few emails, once they start coming through, is I'd start getting carrier appointments just by doing nothing. So essentially everything is taken care of for me from the carrier perspective is how that started to start. And so then we would cluster a few carriers. Like once I got, the first 3 in, TJ, who's the trainer over at Firefly, would get on a call with me, show me the systems, here's those carriers, and then turn them on, and I'd be able to start quoting. So that's essentially how the onboarding process was, is it was piece by piece, like carriers would drip in as, I guess, their upper departments got you appointed. But all the appointment process, I didn't have to do anything but sit on calls, learn the systems, and quote them for myself. So yeah, it was pretty hands off, honestly.
So with that being said, okay, so if we move on beyond the onboarding, now you should be, rubber hitting the road. You're starting to work back with your mortgage brokers and businesses up and running. What kind of results did you see moving from State Farm to starting your own independent agency?
Yes, I saw a lot easier yeses. One of the first things I was afraid of was I had for so long been so confident in one product. And so now I started to quote all these other ones and, have other competitive options come out. And I'm like, oh, well, I've never worked with Travelers. I've never worked with Nationwide, and so all that kind of stuff in the beginning was, all right, being confident in who I'm quoting, which Firefly, again, does a great job of the setup and explaining, hey, these are all our carriers. We pick who they are for a reason. And yes, they're all great. And so getting past that, starting to quote these people and send out these, proposals, like there were a lot of yeses that I would get that like, it felt different. I was like, but I just sent that to you, 10 minutes ago, and like, I felt like I was on a different side of insurance almost when I started to be, to be a broker, because here I am sitting with all of these options. And if someone balks at one, you can go and figure out why. And, here's a bunch of other carriers and satisfy that. So I started to like close stuff a lot easier. And then also the battles I was having to fight, between trying to win somebody over, all that kind of stuff. It's really the same thing, as what I was doing before, being confident in the carrier, confident in the coverage, confident in the agent and the agency. I just started to see all those things flow together a little bit more smoothly. And also I was closing deals with clients that typically were the ones that just go cheap it out, cheap it out, cheap it out, and I was always losing when I got those clients, and not that I want a bunch of those clients, but I also would rather win than lose. And so a lot of those clients I was starting to win. And the good thing is I knew when I was getting one of those just price-based clients, I knew if I set them up an awesome policy all the time and just had a standard for that, it was beneficial for both because they were getting an awesome price and that's what they wanted. And I'm taking care of my people, which is what I want. So that's how things started to go when I started to basically learn how to wheel and deal and sell as a broker.
That's great. So like, it seems like it was a little bit less selling, right? Like you didn't have to sell the brand of State Farm, but rather you'd say, look, here's the offer that I have for you. And people would be like, yeah, this is slam dunk, Evan. This is what I was looking for. And I'm ready to work with you.
Yeah. Barely any brand selling. And that was great. Hey, our agency, the only brand selling I have to do is me. And I'm going to take care of you and make sure that I would set up a policy the same way I do for my brother or my sister or my mom. And I'm going to make sure that's true. And once they know that, it doesn't matter who you quote them. As long as things look good and it's their price they want, exactly what you said. That's a great point. Sorry to interject, but that was awesome.
No, not at all. So you had a really strong closing rate with State Farm. You said you were typically between 30 and up to 40% with your killer months. How did your closing ratio change when you made the jump and now you had more carriers to offer?
Oh yeah, easily 70, sometimes 80%. And that remains from referrals, just because of the relationships I've built, the way that is structured, but also, now you can close pretty much any corner of the market, because you have every corner of the market. As the carriers that we were able to get set up with through Firefly were, ones that allowed us to be competitive at all ranges. And that's why we doubled our closing ratio, because we were able to take care of twice the people. So.
Awesome. And to be clear, just for everybody watching, right? Again, 70 to 80% is not typical, right? Most of our agents, most independent agents are not closing 70, 80%. But most agents with Firefly that are working with mortgage brokers that have that lead source, they might be getting fewer leads than people buying internet leads, but the closing ratio is much, much higher. And so although that's not typical across the board, if you have this sort of marketing plan, then most quotes you get really should be closed. And so Evan's not lying, right? I think insurance agents and salespeople in general, we have a tendency to inflate our numbers, right? I can tell you Evan's numbers they're legitimate. If we could circle back, Evan, we had a question from Landon, and it was, how long did it take, if you remember, between like, let's see, when you signed up with Firefly and running your first quotes, do you remember like the timeline there? Did it feel like there was quite a bit of downtime? Like, do you remember that at all?
Yeah. Honestly, let's see. I can tell you honestly, I remember my first policy I sold, and it was December 19th. Honestly, it took me maybe 30 days to get all the way set up. And that was because of I had, to wait on the entity license to come in. A lot of that was waiting on the state. So once everything came in from the state, I had my first carrier within a week. So I had Nationwide was my first one that came through. That was my first policy. That's all I needed. I'm like, cool, Nationwide, let's go. Now I hardly write Nationwide, but but that moment I was like, this is what I got. We're going to sell it. And, you can sell within a week or two of your stuff coming in, because a lot of the initial carrier appointments will come in pretty quickly. I would say if you're, looking at it switching, just be prepared as far as waiting on the state. And if there's things you can do and get moving in the background beforehand, I don't know, again, I'm removed from the process, but that was really the only thing, was waiting on the state. So carrier wise, no, not a whole lot of downtime. Now there were like a couple that took maybe 40 days or so, but not a big deal because you're getting 5 or 6 carriers within the first few weeks. So
Yep. And that's our experience as well. So I'm impressed that you remember Nationwide was your first one. Heck, man, it's been a couple of years.
It has been, yeah. He's still with us, so that policy has remained competitive. It's still in the books, so happy with that.
There you go. That's great. Okay, so the next question is, if you could talk to an agent, right? So we've got some agents watching today who are contemplating starting their own agency. They're trying to learn how to do it. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, so I would say make sure you know what value you're going to bring as a business, and believe in that and trust in that. Because if I would have just came into this like, I'm going to be an insurance agent, then I might have failed, and I see that a lot because people aren't confident in what they bring to the table. Every insurance agency, yeah, there's a million out there, and that's where you have to kind of drive, what your value as a business is going to be. So for me, it would just be, make sure you're investing in yourself and what you aspire to be as an agent, what you are doing it for, like what's your why, and just stick to that. Because I believe if it's a strong enough why and you have good value and you can get in front of people and explain that and show them that, that's all you need. So I would say, if you're going to make the jump, just be confident in that and make sure you're just sharp as a tack on those things. When people want to know what's your agency about, have it right there and ready to go. Because when you're running every single quote, that needs to be in the back of your mind, because that is what is going to make you successful, I think, or it's just a part of it. For me though, if you're going to do this, just make sure you know who you are as an agent and what value you're going to bring, and as long as you can do that and start to figure that, and it may come over time, but if you just figure out a little bit of that piece and have a why, have a desire, I think you can do great.
That's awesome. So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, right? It's kind of like when somebody, if you go to like a business meeting and they're like, you better know your elevator pitch. And it's like, well, someone's going to ask me for my elevator pitch. I need to be ready. So if you're asking about, or you're encouraging agents, know your value. May I ask you, like, right out, like, do you know what is your value as an insurance agent?
Yeah. So as far as like, when it comes to, when I think of my customers, it varies from time to time. Like if I'm going to a mortgage broker, my value to them is going to be a little bit different than the value I'm going to pitch to my customers. But at the end of the day, the thing that pays my bills, the thing that keeps my agency open, are the customers who pay their premiums that I service. And my value to them is that I'm just going to give them unbiased help. And my slogan and my motto for my business is our relationship, your protection. And so what that means is we're going to put the relationship first. I'm not necessarily concerned with the needs of the carrier, the needs of the company. I know their appetite. I want to know what they want. But as far as like, I'm not going to sit there and just try to hinge somebody a certain way because a certain company told me to. And so my value to the customer was, hey, if you want an unbiased representative who's got a lot of options, that knows how to put a policy together and make sure you're taken care of, and then you can bring your questions and issues to me and I'll figure it out with them. That's kind of what my value is to my customers, is basically being a sounding board for them and being an insurance representative that's as clear and concise as possible, communicates the policy as clearly as I can. And that's my value, is kind of being like almost their insurance advisor. You think of a financial advisor, somebody that's really just got your best interest. That's what I try to bring for my clients every day. So that'd be my value.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. You're an inspiration. No, the unbiased advice. That's huge. And I think, don't get me wrong, I do think that captive agents can have that capacity as well. But there is a certain freedom as an independent agent where you can say you tell me, what do you want? I'll find you the appropriate coverages. I can show you all the quotes, and we can work on a consultative approach here. We can find what you need, and it allows a lot of freedom both for the agent to take care of their client and to offer that unbiased opinion, because you can still close the sale because you have everything that you need.
Got all the options. Yeah,
you got it. All right. So this last couple of questions. Now we've talked about when you needed to make the switch, what was onboarding like, how did you get your agency off the ground? Okay. So this next one is this final question I've got for you is there anything that you do, right, that sets you apart as an agent that you feel other agents are missing on?
Yeah. So anything as an agent I do that other agents are missing on, honestly, communication. It's so basic, but my clients know if they call me, they're going to get a call back. I'm either going to answer, or they're going to get reached back same day. If it's an emergency, out of office, different story or whatever. It's emergency, text me, we'll get it taken care of. But on a daily basis, my clients know that they're going to be responded to, and it's so simple. And I can say all these flashy things and this and that. Being communicative and being present in your customers' lives is the biggest thing that agents miss, because I have so many deals that I win because agents don't call back, or it takes them forever to get back to somebody. And that's the biggest frustration I see across the board is communication, especially today. Everyone wants to hide behind email and text. And I definitely do that for the things I need to. There's some things that can be sorted out over email and text, but when it comes to your client calling you, call them back. That's the biggest thing I would say is just communication, being present.
Yeah, I think that's great input. Now, what's interesting is I think that's not just insurance agents. I think that's businesses in general. I can't tell you how many times, even when we're looking at vendors for automations or for quoting systems or for texting or whatever, right? We'll enter in information on their website, and I expect a call in 5 minutes these days. And if I don't get the call, it's hey, what gives? We're in 2022. I'm ready to buy, and you won't give me a call to talk about your service, or I'll send an email and they take 24 hours to respond. And it can be okay. You can, in certain circumstances, I think it's all right, to take some time to respond to people. But especially in the sales process, it's amazing how being really responsive can absolutely set you apart from a ton of small businesses out there. But Evan, thanks so much. You have any other last minute tidbits or any knowledge that you want to drop on us last second?
No, last second. No, I just want to say thanks for having me. It's very humbling for me to be here. And I guess I'll just say, Ben and I were talking before this, and it's just crazy. When I think of 2.5 years ago, the conversations we were having then, which is, can I trust this? Can I do this? And now I'm sitting here today. It's kind of cool just to see you are capable of doing what you dream of and what you desire to be as a business owner. You just have to believe in it and give it everything, and you can do it. I believe in every single one of y'all. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Evan, thank you so much. What a great encouraging note to end on. So again, we sure appreciate you. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and hope you all have a great Friday.
All right. Thanks.
See ya.